I've got a comment and a question. I have serious issues, I'll just tell you right now, with this, what I call urban myth about quote-unquote cutting-edge material, and it deals in, it goes into this, this whole urban myth about hack material. The reality is, and I'm just going to blurt it out, if your audience doesn't recognize what you're talking about, doesn't matter what it is, they're not going to get the reference. Subsequently, they're not going to get the joke. And here's the catch-22 on this quote-unquote hack thing. There's a lot of comedians out there saying, I need to do something that audiences don't know about. And as soon as they do that, they're dead. So what really makes your stuff personal, what makes your stuff original, is not the topic material. Comedians have talked about kids, driving on the freeway, flying in an airplane. If you take the definition of hack comedy, what people perceive as hack comedy, you'll find that 80 to 90%, maybe even more, of comedians their material will fall into one of these categories that have been predetermined by somebody. I don't know who it is. And it's not about the topic that you talk about. It's your personal experience. It's your personal reflection. It's how you see things through the lens that makes you funny in the first place. What's your comments on that?
So I can't agree more with that because, first of all, I agree with the topics. If we stuck to that definition, there'd be nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? And because it's all been talked about. So yeah, I agree with you that. And I got over. You know how I got over that? It's exactly what you said. The lens that you see life through and your point of view that's made you funny in the first place and made you funny around your friends and family, and because I've always been that guy. I guess some people maybe aren't. And again, sometimes it's just the way you say things. It's the way you with me, it's like the way I get pumped up, or maybe not really angry, but sometimes I get pumped up about stuff that's like really trivial, and people are just like, that's. So there's a lot of aspects that go into how you're naturally funny. But yeah, I agree with you completely. It's like that's what people want to hear, and that's what will always make you unique and original. Because you're right, you could take some of the best comedians that we have in the world, either past or present, and you evaluate their material, and you could call all of them hacky if you just went by the premises. Now, the flip side of that is those, I guess, whatever category you want to call these comedians, I think they have to do something totally out there or different. Sometimes I think they use that as an excuse to not be as funny. And I don't think that flies in comedy. Again, I agree with you as far as, and I know we'll talk about evaluating and all that process, but I think it is more of a black and white thing that, like, as long as you're not stealing material or that, you should be able to evaluate how long they're laughing each minute of your performance. And if you're way out there and thinking you're some smart comic or your material is way above, and that's why I'm not getting as much laughter, I think you're fooling yourself, and I think it's bullshit, to be honest, Steve. I just, to me, and it insults our intelligence to think that, we don't get it or we're not laughing because you're so much smarter. That doesn't fly. You know what I mean? That's very insulting to me and to anybody that's listening. You know what I mean? So, like, who are you to think you're talking about things that are so smart and so unique and out there that nobody else gets it or thinks that, it's either it's funny or it's not. And I think people are using that as an excuse to not be as funny, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think comedians overlook is they become egocentric, and it's all about what I have to talk about. But if you get on stage and you're not getting laughs, then you're just among the throngs of sucky comedians out there. People need to be able to relate to what you're talking about. They need to be able to visualize it in their mind. If they're not able to visualize it in their mind, then they're not going to get the reference, and they're not going to get the funny part. That's one aspect. And that's one of the differences between making people laugh, family, friends, people that you know, people that you don't know, that you meet. When you pop off with your comments or whatever, they get the reference. They get what you're talking about. Well, you've got to make sure that a general audience, when I say general audience, I mean, you've been there, Dave. It can be people from 21 years old to 50-plus years old with different levels of experience, different levels of whatever, and you don't have any control over your audiences. You just don't. They're out there, and the only thing that they care about is being entertained. And if they don't get what you're talking about, then they're not going to be entertained. It doesn't matter what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. And I'll give you a quick example. Like, I talk, obviously, I bring people into my world, which is, I'm married with kids, like you said. I mean, if we couldn't talk about being married with kids, I mean, you'd eliminate a huge chunk of comedy out there, you know what I mean, even from the best of the best. But you're right. I have to talk about kids, though, from my point of view, in a way that's relatable even to someone that's 21 and doesn't have kids, or someone that, and then to take that further, I have my youngest is a special needs child, and that's another one of those personal subjects that I never thought I could touch on, but then I thought, you know what? That's exactly the kind of stuff that makes me unique, that nobody can, you can't really take that from me. So what I have to do then is I have to bring people into my world, because, not everyone is going to relate to having, most people won't be able to relate to that situation, but they can relate to the general situation of knowing maybe a child that behaves in that way, or, and now I'm just bringing you into my world of, like, this is what I have to live with every day, and these are the examples, and that's where the funny comes from. You know what I mean? But they can be on board with the overall. It's still relatable, and that's really the job. Our job is to do that, with like you said, a general crowd that's made up of all different types of people.
Right, and you bring up a good point that people do not have to have a child with challenges to understand issues that children bring. And they bring a lot of them, even the ones that don't have issues. Goodness. I mean, kids are a great source of comedy material. They just are, because they're unfiltered. And if you can relate that to other people, well, they have the same children that have unfiltered stuff, too.
Yeah.